Hey everyone, I would like to introduce you to the lens that I get the absolute most use out of, and that is my Tamrom 17-70. I've had this lens for just over a year now, and to this day it is still the lens out of my whole collection that I get the most use out of. So I think it makes sense to show you some B-roll with this lens, because right now I'm actually not using this lens because it's here in my hand. And just know that when you watch this short reel, that I did not put any kind of like mist filter or ND filter or any kind of like augmentation to the lens to give you the best idea of what this lens looks like. It was just shot with this lens and my Sony FX30, so enjoy. I can't actually read, but yeah, this lens is pretty sick. What do you think, Cheese? Also, don't come at me too hard for holding the mic like this. I know it's kind of frowned upon to hold the live mic like a microphone, but this is a new mic system that I got recently. It's the DJI Mic 2, and I'm liking it so far, but I'm still getting used to like the gain levels and the audio levels to make it all sound correct to you guys. And right now I'm just holding it to make sure that the audio level is good to go so you guys can actually hear me. So back to the lens. So I'll start with its strongest strength for sure, and that is just the amount of focal length that you get when you purchase this lens. So the marked focal lengths on the lens body is 17, 24, 35, 50, and 70. So you're essentially getting like 5 lenses in one for the price of, last I checked, it was like $600. Which yes, even if you're a budget buyer like I was, $600 is still kind of a lot of money. But just understand that you are really getting 5 lenses in one, and you could shoot an entire short film, feature film on this lens. The next strong point for me is going to be how the 70 and the 50mm range look. I really like the longer lens look myself. Even if you're not stopped all the way down to the lens's lowest aperture of f2.8, you're still going to get a lot of like creamy bokeh in the background and good separation from your subject. And this lens really shines, I think, at tighter focal lengths. This next one is more of a strength and a weakness, in my opinion. I guess it just depends on your taste in lenses, but this lens is a pretty clean lens. You're not going to have a lot of character with this lens. Like, some people can watch movies and recognize that it was filmed on a Cook series lens of some kind or some kind of old vintage lens. Not the case with this lens. You're getting a pretty clinical look at pretty much every focal length. That can be a good thing because you can augment the lens, like I mentioned earlier, with mist filters or whatever you need to kind of give a certain filmic look to relieve the highlights a little bit in the case of like mist filters. But the lens by itself is going to be pretty clean. That could be bad for you if you are trying to go for a certain look, because you may have to do something to the lens or something in post to your footage to achieve that look. But overall, I think it's a pretty good like foundation to have a clean look, and then you can kind of like modify it from there. And as I mentioned earlier, the final strength on the list for me is that this lens costs $600 USD. And yes, that's kind of a lot of money for anyone who's trying to buy a budget lens. I personally did like an Affirm thing where I paid like half up front and paid the rest off over time. I think this lens still stands up there as one of the best go-to lenses for budget filmmaking, in my opinion. So as far as weaknesses go, I personally am not a huge fan of how the 17mm setting looks. For some reason, it just has a really crisp, sharp digital look that stands out from even like the 24 or the 35. Something about the widest setting on this lens just does something to the look that makes it feel really digital. I don't know, it could be a taste thing. I personally don't like it as much, but I still use it because sometimes you just have to get the shot. So next on the list for weaknesses is definitely its plastic build. And again, this kind of goes with the budget aspect of it. You're not going to get a full metal body lens along with 5 different nice focal lengths. I don't know if you can hear this. Some lens ASMR there, but yeah, the plastic body build is not great. I do feel like that if I were to drop this lens on concrete or something, it's probably not going to survive. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but it just kind of feels that way. It feels lighter than even some of my smaller lenses that do have only like 1 focal length, like a prime lens, that have metal bodies. So just keep that in mind when you buy it, that it may not be the most durable lens out there, but again, I've had it for over a year now, and it's survived all my films so far, so far so good. And next up is the focus precision. So what I mean by that is on the focus ring, if you are operating this lens in manual focus mode on your camera, and you're trying to pull focus from one subject to another, the amount of distance that you have to turn that ring to go to subject A and then turn it back to go to subject B is going to be different every time. So this lens is fully electronic, so it needs to be on the camera to start turning the focus ring. I can't even like adjust the aperture on this thing without it being on the camera, and that's fine, but just understand that if you're trying to do some manual focus pulling, you're probably going to have a hard time. Hey everyone, Editor Harrison here. I forgot to mention a key feature of this lens, and that is its built-in lens stabilization function. This is not a feature that you can just turn off and on. There's no select switch on the side or anything. It is always on, and it's always trying to kind of like smooth over those natural handheld micro jitters that you have with handheld footage. This was a great lens to have on my Sony ZV-E10 because the ZV-E10 doesn't have any kind of like IBIS or built-in stabilization into the camera, and so having this lens on that camera was great because it was easier to achieve a more smooth look. But if you're going for something that looks more jittery and frantic and like naturally handheld, this lens will always kind of work against that by nature of how it was built. There's that built-in stabilization that is always on. So it'll always try and kind of smooth over those micro jitters that you get with handheld footage. So yeah, keep that in mind. The truth is, you can make any lens look good as long as you're following the core concepts of what makes a shot look good. Backlighting things, good framing, having layers and depth in your image. Your shot's going to look good. So if you're someone like I was and you're on the hunt for a lens and you're watching this video and you're thinking, I can't make my first thing until I have this lens, that's simply not true. There are definitely some really budget options out there for prime lenses, which have one focal length, and other zoom lenses that you can get at like maybe some vintage markets or antique stores or whatever. Just get something to put in your camera and then follow the rules and steps that are necessary to make your image look good, and no matter what you have, you're going to be set up for success. That is all that I have today. Thank you for watching, and have a good day or night. Thanks, bye.